Okay, so we're going to have a little look at how to use images in InDesign, and I guess I'll just give you a little warning that images in InDesign can be a little bit weird and counterintuitive in how you set them up at first. Once you understand why it's done that way, it helps, but yeah, it's not always that obvious. Right, so here is our page, and over here on the right hand side is a pre-made um, frame for an image. We could move this around or rescale it. We could make it full page, um, uh, or half page. We could position it pretty much anywhere we want on this image. We've also got various different guidelines. Those light blue lines that are quite useful in terms of making sure that the layout of the page has a certain symmetry to it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it up here for now, because first thing to do is just get the image on the page and then start solving the riddle of how to put it in later. So um, we need images, and as we go along with this project, this FMP, we can develop some ideas for our images, or if you're doing this later on in the process, hopefully you've already developed ideas for your images, or you can work with me on figuring that out. But a couple of good start points are these websites, one called onsplash.com, and one called pexels.com. So the advantage to these websites is that they are stock photo websites that are generally free, on Splash or um, Pexels. You can change the license to free. So why do we use this site? Because it's high quality images that are copyright free, and therefore we're allowed to use in Neon. Quite a lot of the time I like to mess around with images and get a bit of Photoshop and a bit of experimentation in there. But you know, I get that you may not have that skill set, so this is a good start point. So looking back in InDesign, this was the reference layout that I put together. Bear with here. So this is what we're moving towards. And I got this image on the right off Unsplash. Going back into my internet browser, I think this was the search terms I can't remember I used the first time around, robot music. And there's this image here, possessed photography. It's the person who's uploaded it, and I can download that image. Now, a couple of things. Um, Give a shout out to Possess Photography on social media, or copy the text below to attribute. We will be making sure that on our layout we are crediting whoever the image came from. Even if it's copyright free, we still want to make sure that they get that credit. And that has downloaded. And if I open the folder that that's in, a couple of things that would be useful. I'm going to change the name of it. Um, bu- 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 bum, to I'm going to call it robot music. So that's just going to be useful for me as we go along, to actually know exactly what it's called. And then I'm going to move it. Where am I going to move it? I'm going to move it onto my OneDrive, and I'm going to move it into the same folder that I set up before. Mine's called Neon Issue 9. Yours could be called something different. But key thing is that image is going to live on our OneDrive. Everything in the same place all the same time. So once you have found an image that you could be suitable for the project that you're doing, we can place it in this frame. So just make sure that frame is selected by clicking on it, and then come up to File, and about halfway down you will see an option called Place. If you're a shortcut person, the shortcut is Control D. So in my OneDrive folder called Neon Issue 9, there's my image, and I'll plop that in there. So the image goes in to the frame. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is you'll think, well, That's not the right size. That's not what I want it to look like because it's too zoomed in or it's um, so how do we deal with that? Well, the quickest and easiest way is to right click on the image and to go to fitting and fit the content proportionately. So it's the second option, fit content proportionally, and that will um, oh no, I actually think the first option, fill frame proportionally, is going to be better. So fitting fill frame proportionally, and that will put the image in there as best as it can be fitted into that space. Now, I can scale that up any way I like. So let's say that I wanted this to be full page on this side, and I right click on the image. So what I started by doing was making the frame full page. Should have said that. Start by making the frame full page. Then I right click, do the same thing again, fill frame proportionally. Okay, so that's filling our frame proportionally. The second thing to understand about this the way InDesign handles images is that you've got a difference between the frame and the content. So when you've got a blue box, you're looking at the frame. And if you like, this is kind of like the window of what we can see of the image inside it. And as I'm changing the shape here, you'll see that the image itself doesn't move or rescale. It stays where it is, it stays put. Just the kind of the window that we can see through changes. If I double click, suddenly, oh, um, I have got this yellow box, and that yellow box shows me the actual full size of the image. It's a landscape image actually, and I've put it in a portrait thing, so you can see that the image continues off to the left and the right hand side, and I can then reposition that however I need. So just going to reposition that like this. Um, and there we go. So I can reposition my image within the frame by double clicking. A double click switches between the blue, the frame, which is the window I can see through. Another double click will take me into the yellow, which is the actual image, which I can move around within the frame. So that slightly confusing mechanism is how InDesign works with images, but it is useful because actually when you're doing magazine layout, the image has to fit the frame, not the frame the image. So you need to actually think, okay, where can I put an image on this page? And then I've got to make that image work within that space. It's the opposite of what you do if you had a poster at home. You'd be like, right, I need to get a frame that fits the image. I need to get a frame that is the right size for this image. When you're doing layout design, it's kind of the opposite. You need to get an image that fits the frame. So final thing I want to say on that subject is just zooming in here, I want you to be aware of these red lines. So the actual edge of the page is this black line here, but there's also this red line. Now that red line indicates what's called bleed. And in order to print full page images, as in images that go right up to the edge of the page without any kind of little white edge to them, um, you have to set up a print document so the images run off the edges like this. Then what they actually do is they print the whole of this red area and then trim it down afterwards. So that's how the magazine will be printed. What I'm driving at is if you want your image to be full bleed, to go right up to the edge of the page, when you're creating your text frame, you actually need to make sure that it meets the red lines, because that is the bleed line, and it won't go all the way to the edge if you don't do that. Um, Obviously, there's some problems here. For example, the fact that this image is covering all the text, but we can figure that out fairly simply in the next thrilling episode.